New ground. The Enterprise witnesses a new warp technology, while Worf tests new frontiers of his own.
The Enterprise is participating in experiments with a new propulsion method known as the Soliton wave.
It is warp travel without warp drive.
And Worf's mother beams aboard with Alexander, who is played by a different actor this time.
Alexander is his son, who we first saw in the episode Reunion. And when Worf asks his mom how long they're staying, Alexander says he's not going back.
Worf's mother tells him they are getting too old to take care of Alexander, and he's starting to get disobedient.
He needs a father, his father, to give him that guidance.
Worf teaches Alexander how to block the entire hallway as he awkwardly questions him about his life on Earth.
They go to meet his school teacher, and the meeting is awkward for all three of them, and it's clear that Worf doesn't know anything about his son.
Worf goes to Picard to talk about new security officers on the Enterprise, but they keep getting interrupted by messages involving Worf's son.
Picard lets him go to take care of it, and it's clear he's happy that he still doesn't have to deal with any kids himself.
He says they'll worry about the security stuff later, because as we all know, security isn't a priority on the Enterprise.
The officers are in a meeting with the doctor in charge of the Soliton wave experiment.
And even though this whole technology is made up, given our limited information, the way they talked about it here actually made sense in context, and I was surprised.
A Soliton wave is generated from a planet, and a test ship will ride it like a surfboard, and when it reaches its destination, another planet will dissipate the wave.
And the Enterprise will be monitoring the whole experiment.
Troy's excited about Alexander being on board, and encourages Worf to go on a field trip scheduled for that afternoon.
Apparently, there is an entire natural history museum on the Enterprise. For a second, I thought they might be on the holodeck, but there are actual creatures there.
They're talking about extinct and endangered species, and at one point, Alexander is caught for taking one of the animal models and lying about it.
When Alexander denies stealing the lizard, Worf almost engages the teacher in hand-to-hand combat for accusing him, but it turns out she is right.
So Worf takes him back to their quarters and starts giving the Klingon values and honor talk. He initially gets frustrated, but then uses a Klingon legend and personal experience to attempt a connection.
Even though Alexander probably knows nothing about Klingon legends.
He relays the incident to Troy, who is skeptical with his solution.
I pointed out his error, told him about Kalas and Morath, and explained the value of honor. The boy understood.
The Enterprise prepares for the Soliton experiment, and we actually see the waves hitting the ship, which surprised me, because I think this was a case where it would be better if they didn't show it.
Man, there is just no pleasing you, is there? The experiment is working, it's very impressive, but then things go south, or whatever direction that would be in space. And the test ship explodes, rocking everybody on the Enterprise comically to the side. I was thinking about other rooms on the ship.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about Alexander walking into the freaking room in there, smacking his head on tables and stuff.
What about everyone in 10 forward? They don't bolt furniture to the floor, do they?
They're probably not that smart.
Worf gets called into the teacher's office, and it turns out Alexander still isn't doing so hot.
And he seems to still have difficulty telling the truth.
She suggests bringing in Troy, but Worf goes out to find Alexander, who is in the holodeck fighting a monster in Worf's calisthenics program.
Worf chastises him for his behavior and tells him he's decided to send him to a Klingon school instead. The Soliton wave is still going despite the test ship exploding, and has increased in speed and energy.
Where is it gaining speed from? Where is this extra energy coming from? And the scientist says it will eventually destroy the planet it is headed toward.
Worf is talking to Troy about his decision, and she asks how Worf will feel when Alexander's gone, and does some legit counseling to help Worf examine his own feelings as well as Alexander's. It's nice that they actually used her in the role that she serves on the show, as opposed to, putting her in charge of the whole ship.
Worf goes to talk to Alexander, who is packing up, and who accuses him of sending him away because he is ashamed of him and doesn't care about him.
And before Worf can explain, he's called away to discuss the rogue Soliton wave,
which causes Alexander to throw all his stuff on the floor.
They only have a few hours before the wave hits the planet.
Geordi is explaining his ideas for dealing with it, while trying to ignore how close Data is sitting to him.
They decide the best course of action is to make an explosion right in front of the wave to break it apart.
And they will have to pass through it in order to get in front of it because it has gotten so big, which was the dumbest thing ever.
And when they show the exterior shot, it really looks like they could have gone around it.
And right as they pass through it, Alexander is going to play with the tree monster.
Passing through the wave causes a bunch of stuff to get broken, and Worf detects a fire, and it turns out it's in the biolab with the animals and Alexander. And naturally, anything that could help them out in any way is disabled or damaged.
And they also say that several areas will have to be evacuated because the shields will no longer protect them from the radiation from the explosion.
And Worf and Riker only have 3 minutes to go rescue Alexander.
They find Alexander pinned down by a beam, and Worf summons his inner David Banner to lift it off.
Riker manages to save the tree monsters too, but decides to sacrifice the plastic dinosaurs.
And of course, they don't respond to Picard's attempts to communicate.
The explosion plan works,
And Riker and Worf get out of the room just in time, which is apparently all it takes to be safe from the radiation.
Later in sickbay, Worf tells Alexander he can stay on the Enterprise if he wants an even greater challenge than the Klingon school.
And Alexander accepts the challenge.
New ground. Overall,
This was one of those episodes that has a B-plot that doesn't make much sense and just feels thrown in haphazardly, which was especially disappointing, given that it did make sense at first. I was kind of excited to see something that felt more legitimate, and then it just fell apart. Why were the waves growing? Where were they gaining energy from? And why didn't they still try sending the opposing waves from the planet like they were going to do in the first place? And as far as the A-plot, I felt like not much happened. Worf's son came aboard and acted out, understandably, and Worf struggled to deal with it, understandably. That side of things wasn't bad, but it felt like there was very little actual story, with nothing really changing much over the course of the episode, until things suddenly get better at the end for some reason. I am interested to see where things go with that, but I didn't think this episode had a lot to offer. I gave it a C.
I gave it a C+. Pairing Worf with a kid with no way out is a very interesting choice, and him basically refusing help from the others because he's got it. Absolutely fit with this character type, their relationship does have a lot of character growth potential. Although things were wrapped up a little too neat at the end with them being completely on the same page, it was ironic considering how much of the episode was Troy telling Worf that things aren't going to simply pull a 180 in a single moment. It seems like a failure on the other officer's part to not have already dedicated time for Worf to get all of Alexander's affairs in order. Alexander's reactions were pretty realistic to Worf's actions, and he was not a terrible actor, which was refreshing, although he didn't get any chances to sing. And for Geordi talking up how incredibly awesome and historic the Soliton waves are, I'm guessing they will never come up again in this show.